Hello? Are we live? Can you guys hear us?
Seems we are. Hello. Looks like we have Ben in the chat.
Is that Deadhead? Is that Ben?
I believe so. Welcome, welcome.
What's up, Ben? What's up? Paradoxicologist. Celia. IndieCade Gamer Girl. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Screens. We will be your host this week. My name is Peih-Gee Law. I'm here with David Spira. He's my co-host. We've got our podcast. It's been out for a couple weeks now. And we also have our special guest today, the brilliant puzzle designer, Matthew Stein.
Welcome, Matthew. So today we're going to be exploring puzzle hunts a little bit, which we kind of became a sub-theme of our first stream. So we decided why not just do that this time around. But before we dive in, I have had this like weird game thing like dropped onto my life over the last 2 weeks. I don't think it's actually a game. I think it's someone in my neighborhood is being friendly and weird and friendly. We found 2 weeks ago, we found this envelope put very squarely on the first step of our front stoop. Not in the mailbox or anything, but we woke up in the morning and went to go bring in our garbage can and found this. Inside is a letter, very handmade, that reads...
Secret admirer. Is that a heart? Like what?
Yeah, it reads, "Forget past mistakes, forget failures, forget everything except what you're going to do now and do it. Heart, have a good day, 3 exclamation points." Now, this is kind of weird. Lisa and I's initial reaction was, did one of our puzzle friends decide to like give us a weird puzzle?
I love that that's your first thought.
That was our first thought.
I would be
then,
so creeped out.
Then we figured it was probably just someone odd in the neighborhood. A week later, we got a second one. This was yesterday. That read again, heart. It's kind of hard. Yeah, there we go. And then another little card. This one reads, "Failure in and of itself is not a bad thing, but failing to learn from it is inexcusable. Heart, have a good day, 3 exclamation points." This one was interesting because there's also a way to read it that sounds menacing. Like the other one always sounded friendly no matter how I read it, but this one could be read like failure in and of itself isn't a bad thing, but failing to learn from it is inexcusable. Like
David,
you could read it.
This is how horror movies start. Don't you? Haven't you seen any scary movies?
Many escape rooms.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, don't know exactly what's happening. We do know that our next door neighbors have also received these because we got a text from them being like, have you gotten weird friendly notes, encouraging notes?
But slightly
Which
menacing?
also ruled them
Like
out as suspect. Anyway, we're thinking about leaving a note back for them and putting a puzzle in it. We're just trying to figure out exactly what that's going to be.
So your neighbors have also gotten this note too? Like on each side or just people that you know in the neighborhood?
So far I've only actually chatted with one of our neighbors about it. And yeah, they've received this.
The exact same wording.
Haven't prepared photos. Yeah.
I am so concerned. I'm all like, we have this recorded on video. There's a lot of witnesses. If I don't hear from you in a few days, like, how are you not more concerned about this?
I mean, this isn't the first time. If you look up on Room Escape Artists, we have an older post. I think it's called "The Mystery of the Meow Wolf" postcard. We had once received a postcard from Meow Wolf that just said something like, "You would love it here." Signed no one, and we couldn't figure out for years who it was who sent this to us because the list of possible suspects in our lives was hundreds of people. In the end, it turned out to be one of Lisa's old friends from college who just thought of herself as Lisa and my like artsy museum-y friend, and like it hadn't occurred to her that there were literally hundreds of people in our lives that could have been from, which made it funnier.
It sounds like it's time to get a Ring camera. Like, some.
This is why we have a PO box.
That's... Oh, hey, what's up, Okapi Kid? Agi's in chat. He says, oh man, I came in halfway through whatever this is about and it sounds intense. Hey, Martha's here. What's up? Wentworth does not count. She says, time to move.
Yeah, for those who are just joining, we've been receiving for the last 2 weeks these very weird anonymous cards that have been left on our front yard with bizarre, like, friendly, inspiring messages. I don't know. But we're super amused by them. So thought I'd share that with you all. And next time fill you in on what weird stuff comes out of this.
This is okay. If there was a phone number on there, would you call it?
Oh, if there was a phone number on there, I would absolutely call it from a Google Voice number.
Because I remember we were talking about ARGs on our first podcast, and it's like, like you find a slip of paper and someone's like, come meet me here if you want to hear, whatever, something cool. And I'm like, would you go? Like, would you call this number?
Yeah. No, I would definitely. I am open to this going deeper. We'll see how deep, but it's also weird and interesting because there's an asymmetry to this in that however I interact with these people, they are, for the most part, anonymous, and I, for the most part, am not, which creates a strange little power imbalance in this game.
Yeah, they know where you live.
Yeah.
All right, well, keep us posted if I even see you next month.
If I disappear, you know what happened. So anyway, we should talk puzzle hunts. We have Matthew here.
Matthew's first time on stream. He's like, what the heck have I walked into?
We warned you, casual.
I'm so used to random notes in the mail. Like, I get a random email that's probably a spam email, and I'm like, but is there something to solve here?
That's what happens when you live in puzzle design world.
That's what we need. We need to make a subscription puzzle service that sends you messages that look like spam but are actually puzzles.
I started working on a show/experience a while back, which the first step would be instructing you not to throw out or delete any spam-seeming messages for 2 weeks prior to the date you book. And it would just sort of be...
That sounds awful. Like...
That's why I abandoned it for now until finding a more sustainable way to. It would have been about interacting with a purported spammer who has some secrets.
I really don't like that because on our first podcast where we interviewed Alon Lee, who, designs and creates ARGs, he told us a story that really illustrated the importance of setting boundaries within this type of game, right? Because you'll have to listen to the podcast if you want to hear the whole story. But
the story is nuts. But I do think, I think spam's an interesting thing to play with from on a basic level. But yeah, the implications of someone misunderstanding it and doing something that damages themselves in the process is probably a risk that's too big to ignore.
Could you imagine the liability of somebody saying, like, as part of this game, please don't delete or ignore any of the spam, and then some guy ends up getting billed for a $5,000 because they ended up following the rabbit hole of some actual legit spam call, right? That sounds like such a liability to me.
If I ever do this, there absolutely are well-defined boundaries in what you can and can't do.
Yeah.
It's more so that it is things that could be formatted like spam, but it will be very clear who the sender is, that you don't need to send personal information or money to anybody.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's inspired by some really fascinating YouTube channels of people responding to spammers and sort of engaging with them in comical ways and replicating that in a semi-sandboxed environment. But they're... with anything I make...
The Nigerian Prince game? Celia is saying, I have a good story about Alon Lee. I can tell you sometimes. I have found since putting out that podcast that everyone who has met Alon Lee has a good story about Alon Lee.
I also feel like I don't know any time where like Alon has told a story and it hasn't involved some other project that I'm like, you were involved with that project? Like how like are you involved with so many different projects? Oh hey, Errol's in chat. What's up, Errol? Yeah.
Yeah, so Matthew, you have created a new game called Escape the Plagues. It is a beginner-friendly Passover puzzle hunt. Tell us about it.
Yes. So this game is a bit different than what I think most people will have come across before. It has the structure of a traditional light puzzle hunt. There are 4 what we call feeder puzzles. I'll say more on that in a moment. 4 puzzles that then feed into a meta puzzle, which gives one final answer. Each puzzle has a phrase as its a recognizable English phrase as its answer. And they employ a variety of puzzle formats and methods of extraction. But it's much more than that. The puzzles are sort of supporting the main part of the content, which is a 5-scene story interacting with 6 characters and sort of threaded with various social justice themes, which are rooted in the idea of escape and liberation that's so key to the holiday of Passover.
That's really cool. So as we go through this, I'm going to ask you to, Peih-Gee and I are probably both going to ask you to define some of the things. What is a meta puzzle? Just for those who are not familiar.
Yeah, so puzzle hunts are both have sort of a recognizable style of solving, but also are almost by definition, people break the rules all the time because there are no rules. So anything I say, anything I define is sort of going to be the general definition, but always has exceptions and people sort of subverting expectations in various puzzle hunts. But broadly speaking, a meta puzzle is a puzzle that sort of is the capstone of a round of puzzles. And each puzzle in that round contributes an answer to this meta puzzle. And the meta puzzle uses all the answers to the individual puzzles in that round to produce some final answer.
So the answers to each individual puzzle get fed in and become a puzzle in and of itself.
Exactly. And there's sort of 2 main categories of meta puzzles. There are meta puzzles which have a shell, which means that when you go to solve the meta puzzle, some content is provided for the meta puzzle. It might be a grid, it might be a series of images, it might just be a few lines of text and some cryptic symbols. Could be anything, just as with any given puzzle. But then there also are shell-less meta puzzles, which mean that just the answers on their own comprise the content of the meta puzzle. And these tend to be a bit more challenging to construct because they're more constrained within the set of answers, but they tend to also be the most satisfying to solve because you're solving all these individual puzzles and you don't necessarily notice a pattern amongst them until you're given like 1 line of flavor text for the meta puzzle, which leads you to realize, oh, a subset of the letters in each of these answers anagrams to each of the first names of Doctor Who portrayers, and then the other letters can do this. Like, you get into all sorts of really zany niche.
It always feels like a magic trick when that happens too. It's like all of a sudden, it's like, do you guys remember those 3D photos like in the 90s where it just looks like a bunch of random stuff, and then if you kind of unfocus your eyes, and then all of a sudden it's like this 3D picture pops up?
It's not a sailboat, it's a schooner.
I
have never been able to see a magic eye in my life.
What?
I cannot actually, whatever the trick is, whatever the thing you're supposed to do with your eyes, I am not capable of doing it, and it is not for lack of trying.
I can do it. Look, I'm doing it right now. Like, I'm like, you unfocus. By the way, can I say in chat, James Cobalt says, I met a puzzle once, and I sat there staring at this comment, and then I just got it. I met a puzzle once, and then every time you guys kept saying meta puzzle, that's all I could hear after that.
Peih-Gee, something you mentioned, it feeling like a magic trick, honestly is exactly the vibe you want to go for when constructing, or as a solver, what you want to experience. I'll define two other terms that come up pretty frequently in puzzle hunts, which are partial solving and back solving. So partial solving means that you have only a subset of the data that you need for a puzzle, and you're able to, and this often applies to meta puzzles, but can apply to individual puzzles as well. So let's say I'm solving a puzzle that has 20 clues, and I only solve half of the clues, and I figure out the answer from those half of the clues. That would be partial solving that puzzle. And similarly, if I have a meta puzzle that has 12 feeder answers, those are the answers to the individual rounds. If I solve it with only 7 of the 12, that would be partial solving. Then back solving is once I partial solve something, if I'm able to, using the constraints of the puzzle and sort of what I know about what the answer might be, figure out a feeder answer without actually solving the puzzle.
Right.
It's a big brain move.
Reverse engineering the puzzle answer.
Yeah.
That's like reverse engineering it, kind of, right? Since you're like, now you're looking for a theater, and you can kind of try to guess and then shoehorn it into whatever might fit.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Matthew, before we go and take a look at one of the puzzles that you've made, I know I collaborated with you on a puzzle hunt before, and you also write for the Room Escape Artist Hive Mind. I know that you love making really hard puzzles.
Yes.
Very hard puzzles. What was it like for you to go and make a proper beginner-friendly puzzle hunt? How did you feel you had to change to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sort of my overall puzzle design ideology is structured around designing the experience leading up to an aha moment, because the aha moment is that magic trick. It's this paradigm shift where there's some initial misdirection, you don't know what to do when you start off, and then through interacting with the content somehow, the content of the puzzle, you are led to figure out what to do, you have some realization, and that's the defining property of a puzzle for me. For more beginner-friendly puzzles, the two things you sort of have to pull back on are layers. There can't be as many sort of revealing multiple layers to the solve. Oftentimes in puzzle hunts, you'll have puzzles where you do one initial step, and then that consolidates the data somehow. You do another layer of something. There might be 5-6 steps even to a given puzzle or more. For more beginner-friendly puzzles, I think the most we have is like 3 steps, and they're all pretty simple steps within this game. The other thing is sort of relying less on conventions. I see there being sort of 3 vectors, 3 dimensions of difficulty for puzzles. Puzzles generally, not just in puzzle hunts. There's knowledge of puzzles difficulty. So do you recognize this puzzle type? Do you have experience solving it in the past? This certainly takes form in escape rooms also, when those of us who've played a ton immediately recognize common puzzle types in escape rooms, and they're less so puzzles then. Then a second dimension of difficulty is just like raw difficulty, like this is hard to do. Cryptic crosswords, even when you know how they work, they're still hard to do. Tricky logic puzzles, even when you know how they work, they're still hard to do. Hard to implement the solution.
And that's like as an example of that, the Pigpen cipher, the first time you see it can be presented as a puzzle, but once you know how it works, it's never ever a puzzle again.
Yeah, exactly. And any cipher, really.
Yeah.
And then the third dimension of difficulty, which I feel like we acknowledge a bit less, is trust in the designer. And as that relates especially to how much how deep the puzzly intentionality of the design goes. So if I'm playing a game and I know that this actually applies to many of the puzzles in the Cryptex hunt, which were designed by many different people. I won't spoil anything, obviously, but the puzzle layer was sort of an extraction, which sometimes played on information throughout the game, throughout the text adventure, sometimes just took the form at the end. And because that varied from game to game, the hardest point of difficulty for me was knowing when to sort of switch my brain into puzzle hunt mode to realize, oh, this could use an outside reference, or, oh, all of these like puzzle hunt impulses that I've been trying to suppress when just solving a fun text adventure and enjoying a story. Suddenly I can like turn those puzzle hunt impulses back on.
It's interesting. One of the things that Lisa and I, and it's been a while since we've done this, but when we do escape rooms and we play multiple games at a single company, we always like to play their easiest game first if they have difficulty ratings to them, because we like to get a sense for their style on the easier games, so that when we go in, we know whether to trust them or not in the hard games. We also do that within an individual like 60-minute game. We're keenly aware of how cleanly or messily a puzzle solves in the first few times we solve. So that if we get stuck somewhere in the middle, and people start trying to guess really random stuff, I will either be like, you know what, the previous puzzles were a mess. Yeah, go for the bad ideas, or hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. All of the other solutions thus far had really clean, elegant solutions. Maybe we should, continue to trust that until proven otherwise.
Totally. And like in a puzzle hunt, I know that the answer format, even if I have no idea what the answer is or how long it's going to be, I know it's going to be a real word or phrase or name or something. In an escape room, if I'm not familiar with the creator, if I have a 5-letter lock, I would hope that it's a recognizable word, but there are plenty of games in which it's just a random sequence of 5 letters.
The worst. Why do people do that? Like, why not have it be an actual word? It just seems...
Yeah. There are, I think there are two legitimate schools of thought there. There are people who get really nervous about having the words be too guessable, having them be, and we've played games like that. We played like a dog themed game, not it had like a sub theme of dogs, and every single solution was like the name of a breed of a dog, or like the word puppy or something like that. And it got to a point where we had guessed all of the locks open, and then we went back through and we solved everything, but we actually had everything open already because we could.
That sounds like laziness. Like you could still have things dog themed without having it all be the exact same type of answer.
I agree, but it's there are definitely people who I think have taken it to, especially designers who have taken it to the word theming too far, made their puzzles solutions super guessable, and then what they've learned from that is, oh, I shouldn't do that. Let me go and make everything more random. I think it's not necessarily the right lesson, but there are also circumstances where having a really hard password as the solution might make sense.
Well, it's different in escape rooms because they are constrained by like a 5-digit, lock, 5-character lock. Whereas I love how in puzzle hunts, a lot of the answers are like puns. So it's like it's on theme, but it's not anything you could have ever have just guessed, right? Like you couldn't run this through some kind of like computer program and just have it guess 10,000 combinations.
Exactly. And when coming up with punny answers for puzzle hunts, a big consideration is how can we design a pun, because it's not just like randomly coming up with a pun and like, oh, I like that one, and then just using it. It's making sure that it's a pun that's not the path to coming up with that pun is not going to be obvious to the solvers.
Right.
Because if I'm writing a puzzle about dogs, I could come up with a million dog puns. I could just like Google dog puns and use one of the ones I find as an answer. But any of the solvers, if they realize it's a dog-themed puzzle and they get 2 of the letters, they could be like, oh, it's, I don't know, give a Shih Tzu. And like,
that sounds rough. I have a personal rule. It is whenever I see a 4-digit letter lock that is closing something in the floor, I will always, first thing, just input the word berry into that. It is right almost every time. Those vertical 4-digit master locks that they usually come in very bright colors. They all have the letters to spell berry, and almost every time I've ever seen that lock mounted in a floor, that has worked.
Bary?
Bury. Berry is in like buried,
Oh,
buried underground.
Oh,
To bury.
okay.
Yes.
Oh, hey, James. Sorry, I had to shout out to one of my patrons. He's in the chat, too. YVH says, Peih-Gee, are you ever going to finish the Cryptics Hunt? Yes, I'm on 11.
Okapi Kid, Augie is saying, fun fact, the Magic Eye trick is super useful for solving the find the difference between two pictures puzzles. So, fun fact, Brendan from the Recon team, Brendan Lutz, is superhuman at solving those find the difference puzzles. We were in a bar with him after a conference back in the days when those things existed, and he put like a quarter into one of those machines that has the spot the differences.
I love those.
And sat there solving them in seconds until the machine broke. It like decided that he was done, and it like shut itself down. He was there for a solid, probably an hour.
On one quarter, probably.
Never. I mean, he never even came close to failing. He's just like next. It's awesome and freakish.
Brendan is secretly an AI. That's why.
Yeah, back to your original question of the process of designing more beginner-friendly puzzles. There's sort of two tactics I go with more beginner-friendly puzzles. One is completely come up with original puzzle ideas and new formats and things that don't look like puzzles whatsoever, and make everything a puzzle. Since this game, the focus really was on the narrative and the themes and the interaction and the discussion that was prompted by the game, and because it was an audience that the vast majority of which is not going to be familiar with puzzle hunts, I went the come up with interesting and engaging riffs on more recognizable puzzle types for those people in the know. That said, still making sure that answer structure was parallel and clean, they all had the same type of pun in them, making sure that each extraction was different. I wasn't just like number indexing for each answer, and trying to sort of have properties to the set that would make it interesting and engaging for more experienced puzzlers as well.
Can you define indexing? This is a type of puzzle, right?
Yes. So indexing is basically you have a sequence of letters, often called a word or a phrase. I'm a software engineer also, so if I use any coding-esque lingo, just let me know. You have a string of letters.
Otherwise known as a word.
You have a word and a number, and you count that many letters into the number, and you get a letter. It's basically the most common way to extract, as we call it, letters from answers.
So is that the same thing? So I've heard people also say like, oh, it's an extraction. That's the same thing?
Indexing is a specific type of extraction. So extraction is the broad category of different ways to get an answer. Indexing is specifically using an index, using a number. Though I would argue that there's like a sort of visual indexing also, but yeah.
That was the big thing for me when I started doing puzzle hunts, was getting a handle on this concept of extraction, which is like frequently you end up, when you solve a puzzle hunt puzzle, you frequently get to a solution that feels really good, but isn't actually the thing that you needed to get. There's usually this extra step of extracting out information. And indexing is one way. Anagramming is like is a frowned upon way. In fact, it was one of those interesting things that we found as we got more immersed in the puzzle hunt community, is that anagramming is generally seems to be like very low tier extraction. And if it isn't explicitly clued, you should almost never anagram. And puzzle hunters that I know, like the serious puzzle hunters that I know, who see unclued anagramming. They look at it in the same way that like seasoned escape room players will look at like, you know, handheld black lights in a large room. It's very,
it's lazy. It's not elegant. It's not interesting.
I would very much include myself in that category. The most common and easiest to design style of a puzzle hunt puzzle is, people use a somewhat unfortunate, perhaps, acronym for it, ISIS: identify, sort, index, solve, which you first identify what you're supposed to do it, then there's some sorting step. You have things that are not in order, you have to sort them into a clued order somehow. You index, you get letters, and then you might repeat the whole thing. Maybe that leads to an instruction to do a next step, but eventually leads to solving to the answer phrase. Sorting also, that very much relates to anagramming. If you don't have that sorting step and it is just a random unclued anagram, it's just more interesting to... Puzzles are all about extracting meaning from noise and realizing that noise is not just random noise. So if part of your puzzle design involves random noise that is truly just random noise, it's messy, but it's also just less satisfying to solve. So we often, in the initial presentation of puzzles, really take this into account. So say I have a series of clues and there's some there's some sorting step. So there's some property to the answers that allows me to put them in a specific order. Obviously, I'm not going to put them in that order when I present it to people. So commonly, I'll either sort the clues alphabetically, or I'll sort the clues such that the answers to the clues are alphabetical. If I just put them in a truly random order, that would be very frowned upon, because I as a solver would assume that there's some meaning to the order in which it's given to me. And that would just throw people off.
Yeah.
Speaking of elegant puzzle hunt puzzles, if anyone is looking for a challenging puzzle hunt puzzle that but for me is probably my favorite puzzle that I've ever seen, it's from a mystery hunt from, I want to say 3 mystery hunts ago. It's called Message in a Bottle. It is a bit of a word puzzle, a little bit of science, conceptual science in there, and it's a beast.
What's it called again?
Message in a Bottle.
Is it still up? Do you know?
Yeah, all of the mystery hunt puzzles are up. In order to solve it, you just need some paper, scissor, and a big brain. I contributed to solving it. I thought that I contributed substantially to the first part of it, and then the extraction layer of that blew my mind.
Okay.
But yeah,
okay.
I highly recommend Message in a Bottle.
My favorite puzzle hunt is, I think, one that Matthew worked on, which is the Pilcrow Bar puzzle hunt that was like from spring of last year.
Yeah.
I thought those were the most elegantly designed puzzles. Beautiful. The graphics were gorgeous. They were fun. They were tough. But when you kind of figured it out, it was super satisfying. Really different. And I was just amazed at like how many different layers there were, there were to it. Highly recommend that. I'm working through some of them with my patrons right now. So we are slowly making our way through.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a collaboration with Sandy Weiss of the Mystery League in Chicago. And we made it in celebration of Alinea, this amazing Michelin star restaurant, their 15th anniversary, which they were not able to celebrate in person, but did some like boxed meal kits, very fancy boxed meal kits, and a 1.5-month long puzzle hunt.
Yeah, food themed.
Yeah, it was that was a very different take on sort of a beginner's puzzle hunt, because the puzzles got very difficult by the end.
I'm all like, did you just call that a beginner's puzzle hunt? Because I thought it was so hard.
Well, beginners only in the sense that it was intended to be accessible to people who hadn't done puzzle hunts before.
Yeah.
So we designed the difficulty curve throughout the hunt so that you learned not easy but easier mechanics over the first few puzzles, and then we sort of remixed and used those in new and increasingly more insidious ways as we went along.
The cluing was really fun for that. I really think that's such an art form with the puzzle hunts, is how the clues are presented like in the flavor text, and that's always my favorite part, is like combing through it and just seeing where like the trail of breadcrumbs starts, right?
That's one of the hardest parts in writing puzzles as well, because the content and mechanics of the puzzle should be calibrated to the audience, but even more so the flavor text and how overt it is, the sort of balance between light illusion versus subtle hint versus explicit instruction.
Yeah.
And what goes in the flavor, and flavor text, if people don't know, is sort of the accompanying text that usually immediately precedes a puzzle, which isn't usually instructions, but has keywords that may give hints as to what to do in the puzzle.
Like setting the scene. I always get really mad when there aren't clues in it, because I will sit there and comb through it with like, you know, my little magnifying glass, like, and I'm like, did I just waste 20 minutes like rereading this 5 times?
Yeah.
I want to say thank you to Cypher House for finding the link to the message in the bottle puzzle. Also, would strongly recommend checking out his YouTube channel, where he actually does break down puzzle hunt mechanics. Yeah, strong recommend there. And you should post your own link there too, please. As long as you're posting links. So we should probably take a look at one of the puzzles from Escape the Plagues.
Let me just get that link up. Is it just escapetheplagues.com?
No, I think Matthew's going to share a screen.
I know, but I just wanted to share a link to his.
Oh, yes.
Yep, escapetheplagues.com.
Yeah, so that is Matthew's puzzle hunt that he just came out with. It is like a Passover social justice theme, and it's something that you can play with. Like, would you say it's family friendly? Like, play.
Yeah, family friendly. We're saying ages 9 and up, but a couple years younger with family is doable as well.
Awesome.
But very much designed for intergenerational learning, discussion. We've been having solvers of all ages really having fun with it.
I have a question. When you're designing puzzle hunts or just puzzles in general, do you start with just like a kernel of how you want the mechanics to work?
It really depends on the project. I both narratively and puzzle structurally work from the meta backwards. So I figure out what the key plot points are, and accordingly the key sort of puzzle gating points are.
What's a puzzle? What do you mean by puzzle gating?
So puzzle gating being when you put in an answer and unlock something else.
Okay.
So using puzzles to gate content, to gate space, to gate information.
So you start from the end and then kind of are like, where are the stopping points where I want people to stop, maybe get more of the story, advance the narrative?
Right, so there's sort of a metaphorical meta puzzle of the range of places I think people will be just in mindset, in assumptions when they start off, and where I want them to, the point I want them to reach by the end, and then figure out how I want them to get there.
Wow, I didn't.
Are along the way.
I never realized so much thought process goes into like you kind of getting into the players' heads and like managing our expectations and managing like the on-ramping, you know, all of that. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm sure. Well, I know for a fact that the way I approach this is certainly very different than how many other puzzle designers approach this. But recently, a lot of my work has been experimenting with ways to more meaningfully tell story through puzzles directly. And the specific form that takes in Escape the Plagues is paying special attention to ensuring that the mechanics of each puzzle, that what you're guided to do in each puzzle, reinforce the story in that scene. So for instance, there's a protest scene early on in the game, and I won't spoil that puzzle, but the puzzle guides you to speak phrases out loud. So the implication of the puzzle object is having the experience of speaking words back and forth, which is something you would actually do at a protest.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So that sort of direction of, if the puzzle of the experience is people don't know what to do and then they figure out what action they're supposed to take, if I can get that action to be something that further immerses them in the story or in a certain mindset, then I can more directly use puzzles to tell a story, to convey a specific arc of experience.
Those are always like the hardest puzzles for me. Like, I've been in rooms before where it's like, oh, I literally have to do this. Literally grab that bear's nose and twist it or some shit. And like, I remember, I was like, and I'd seen this and my friend Jason was like, well, there's a bear there. Why don't we do it? And I'm like, that's not going to be it. That's so dumb. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, there must be like some puzzle hidden in this. And he just went and did. And I'm like, and that was it. Like, what the?
Yeah.
Or like, you have to like wave your head, do a dance or sing, like when you have to chant this thing out loud. I'm like, do we really have to do this?
Yeah. Well, it's within the confines of what you think might be the answer. If you think the answer might be within a certain form, or you think what you have to do to arrive at the answer is within a certain set of boundaries, then breaking those boundaries can either feel very arbitrary and random, when it is like I shout out a phrase in an escape room and because they're watching me something magical happens. Unless that's really well contextualized, that doesn't usually land for me. But if what you're guided to break, not physically break in an escape room setting, the assumptions that you're breaking down are meaningfully contextualized, that can be a really powerful moment. You can realize that, oh, this blind spot that I had in the context of an escape room or within the context of the puzzle hunt, that's actually like a blind spot in my awareness of my surroundings in everyday life.
Right.
And suddenly the moment that you had in a game has much deeper meaning outside of the game.
That's cool. We can start on this puzzle. Do you guys want to take a quick break before we get into the puzzle? Does anybody need to take a little break? Get into
I'm
it?
good if y'all are.
Good for now, yeah.
Okay.
Then let's dive on in.
Did you want to do the screen share, Matthew?
Sure.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me switch over just when you do.
Okay.
While you get that up and running, I will let all the folks who are listening know that since our last stream, Peih-Gee and I did in fact launch the podcast we've been working on for months. We now have 3 episodes up. The first one is just Peih-Gee and I sort of getting to know one another. The second is with the aforementioned Alon Lee, creator of Exploding Kittens, and it turns out everything else ever made. And then the third episode is with Miles Nye, who is a Survivor Challenge consultant, and he's, especially if you're a Survivor fan, there's a lot in this episode for you. He covers all sorts of stuff about game design, puzzle design, super interesting. And the next episode that we have coming up, which will release next Monday night, is going to be with the Wild Optimist, Juliana and Ariel, the creators of Escape Room in a Box. And it's a delight. Cannot wait to share it with you. So that's the Reality Escape Pod. You can find it on roomescapeartist.com.
I put a link in the chat if you guys are interested in checking out the podcast, and I guess I'll just do a really, really quick promotion that for the Patreon, we also have, David and I have bonus content also. So we have an after show where after every interview, we sit around as conversations like this, where we chat about the interview we just had, about whatever we're doing. So that is bonus content. That's only $5 a month in the Patreon. And then we are also doing the Spoilers Club, where we will be playing games, and then this way we can talk about the games. We'll let everybody know ahead of time. This month's game is going to be Locurio's The Vanishing Act, and then afterwards David and I will discuss we'll kind of do like a walkthrough of the game. We'll talk about the game in detail. This will only be for people who have already played the game, so do not spoil yourselves. Play the game first, and then you can like join in on the conversation.
Yeah, we mentioned this last time, we've been trying to figure out how we can have proper spoiler-filled discussions about these games without putting the companies that we're trying to elevate at risk of losing out on money. And so one of the ways that we figured out we could do this is by putting our spoiler-filled discussion behind the paywall. And that way it's not out on the open internet. We're not, adversely affecting, and we're driving people who are an engaged audience to go and play these games so that we can then have spoiler-filled discussions where we dive into what it is they did to make it special and make it interesting. So we're experimenting with a lot of different stuff there. And what you're seeing here today is also another example of we're trying to figure out how to work with people who make tabletop games and puzzle hunt games, and figure out a way that we could look at an element of their game without spoiling the whole experience. So this is stuff that we're really serious about exploring. We haven't seen anyone in the community really crack these codes, so we're trying. We're really trying. So hope you join us on that journey. And without further ado, let's take a look at the community garden puzzle.
Great. So you're going to be missing a little bit of context jumping in at this point. At the start of the game, there are, of course, like instructions on how to play. There's a character sheet where each player can pick one of 6 characters and get some background on those characters. For now, I don't know, up to you. Do you want to read through the whole scene, just the end where it gives sort of context for the puzzle?
I think let's jump into the context for the puzzle. I think the whole story, I think, is probably going to feel a little disjointed if you aren't following this up to this point. But I think, let's just set up the context here.
All right, so we are in the community garden. Wendy, the climate crisis is so scary. Are these kids? Okay.
Yeah.
Sam, but it was less scary when we did something about it with all those people. Mika, our work is far from done, but our voices felt so strong together. Eli says, exactly. That's why my parents started this community garden 5 years ago. They love the idea of Shemitah. Am I saying that right? Shemitah from the Torah, which is when Jews open their farm gates every 7 years so that everyone can get equal access to local food. That's cool. Dusty.
Concept where it sort of gives the land time to rest, and the fields are sort of open to anybody who needs food.
Right. Dusty says, I don't understand how they did it all by themselves. David, do you want to take over? Eli, lots of people helped. Sorry, put him on the spot.
Eli, well, lots of people helped with the hard work of turning an empty lot into what you see now. People grow their own veggies and help build new plots. And just like we do at the Seder, we welcome everyone into the garden. Mika, this reminds me of what my mom taught me. If you take care of a plant, it will take care of you. I'm trying really hard to learn how to do that. Eli, and that's how we see community too. If you take care of the people in your community, they'll take care of you. The garden has brought our community so much closer, so we're expanding it. We're adding 3 new plots to grow produce for the community fridge, but we're still deciding which veggies to grow. Wanda, this puzzle has 3 steps. First, find 4 veggies hidden in each plot. Mika, second, use the planting schedule to figure out the months when all 4 veggies can be planted at the same time. And Eli, third, use the month number to reveal words in your surroundings that create the answer. We're counting on you. So these last 3 feel like the flavor text for the puzzle. And they're outlining the steps that we're going to have to take to go through this. So that first one is this puzzle is find 4 veggies hidden in each plot.
Okay. Yeah. And the second one sounds like a bit of maybe a logic puzzle.
Use the planting schedule. Yep. And the last one looks like an extraction.
Okay. Hey, I am gonna be right back. But David, you just get started. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can. I'm gonna turn on my annotate. Can I draw? I can draw.
Sure,
cool.
Move the screen while you're annotating.
All right. Undo. All right. So, looks like we have. I see. E P L A N T. Eggplant. Okay. Second one. Let's change colors. Squash. Squash. Third one. Let's see what else we got.
Oh, is this kind of like a word search?
Yeah. So what's going on here is in each plot we're getting you can see my gorgeous drawing here. We're getting so the brown one here is eggplant. So we have EGGPLANT.
Okay.
And then the second one, the red one, was squash. SQUASH. Looks like we have, is it celery? Yeah, looks like celery.
Eggplant, squash.
Yep. And celery. And the last one is going to be beets. I'm not going to draw that in. We don't need any more of my drawing. Beets.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, annotate on Zoom is a really good way, by the way. If you guys are doing puzzle hunts at home, Zoom has the annotate function. We use this a lot. Does it maintain it when you scroll up and down? Yeah, I think it stays on the orientation.
I'm not going to right now. It maintains it in the same position on the screen.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
So if I did this, it will go away.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. But I just want to give a shout also to another patron, Scott Ricalsa. He's in chat. He says the price of a cup of coffee. That's what I always say. And I'm like, $5, Patreon. Price of a cup of coffee. You get an extra hour's worth of content. All right. David's getting... David, wait, give me...
Once we start solving it.
Brussels sprouts. I feel like I see cauliflower. FLOWER.
Yep.
I'll mostly stay quiet, but I'll add one note that we made sure to include Brussels sprouts in this one because everybody always spells it Brussels sprouts. And I want to teach kids how to properly spell Brussels sprouts.
With the S.
Yes. Interestingly, I was reading that apparently Brussels sprouts have this like really like cliched bad reputation for being gross and bitter, and I don't think they are at all. And I found out that through kind of selective breeding, the flavor of Brussels sprouts has been improved dramatically over the last couple of decades, and that they actually used to be kind of atrocious.
But they're like the new hot. They're like the hip vegetable. They're even hipper than kale now.
We cook a lot of Brussels sprouts. Anyway,
how do you cook them? What's your favorite way?
We roast them.
Yes.
Toss them in all sorts of spices, usually some lemon juice or balsamic vinegar or something.
You know, since I got an air fryer, I do them in the air fryer, and it's amazing, and it's so fast. Or you shred them and use salt and pepper in a saute pan. I'm sorry, we're in the vegetable garden. Like this is.
Yeah, we can do the cooking show.
But honestly, roasting any vegetable makes them delicious. Okay, we've got Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, lettuce. Oh, there's another one. And I guess this is tomatoes. Okay.
I know tomatoes are not actually vegetables, but culinarily they
are.
Did I spell it right? Is it ES? Okay. All right. The third box. This is fun. I'm like, what are we missing here? Broccoli, maybe? Broccoli.
Onions. This puzzle has layers. Like ogres.
Oops. Onions. What else is there?
I see SPINACH. Spinach.
Aha. Spinach, the old hotness. Remember when spinach was like so popular in the 90s? Veggies through the decades, like
all of the fun things that you get from us in this stream.
Spinach always leaves a weird feeling in my mouth. Does that happen to anyone else? Is it because I'm slightly allergic, or like I feel like it always coats it?
I'm just not a big fan of
just
spinach.
me? No, yeah. And we're on the last one.
I believe it is carrots.
Okay.
Which I am severely allergic to.
Really?
Yeah.
Severely, like you will need like an EpiPen if you.
Pretty close.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
There's
It's a shame. I like carrots.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So we've now got our answers, and the second clue. Oh my God! It's like pouring rain outside. The second clue was figure out the month. Can you scroll up, Matthew? Let's.
So before we move on, I do want to note, just really nice job on this first one. The celery, the way that the letters are darkened, which is just a very clear lesson in how this puzzle is supposed to work. Really nice affordance for new players.
Oh, the kind of on-ramping, like a slight kind of hinting without giving it away entirely. And it was tricky enough. The way you split up the letters, it's not like super obvious just at first glance.
Yeah. Yeah, this puzzle type doesn't really have a canonical name. It pops up in puzzle hunts here and there. It's usually a 5x5 grid more commonly than a 4x5. 4x5 means that they're 4 words instead of 5 in each one, makes it a notch easier. And yeah, to what David was saying about the celery example, the original version of this puzzle did just have no givens, no. I'm always sort of towing the balance of what will look most natural versus what will give solvers the most structure along the way. So originally we actually had a bunch of like background garden stuff on the sides, decided to add lines to fill in the vegetables instead and sort of give an example instead of writing out the instructions. Which definitely for newer solvers is balancing that like visual diegesis versus accessibility.
What's a visual diegesis?
How visually something makes sense within an environment.
Right.
So I'm not sure what the best way to do this. Maybe you can take a screenshot. When I scroll down to the second page of this puzzle, it's going to mess up the alignment of the first one.
Oh,
well, we can scroll down and then we can probably
well, it'll still have all this on it.
Oh yeah, true.
That's why.
There we go.
A bunch of mess on top of this page, but.
Oh well, do we need these answers still for?
Well, I'll leave that up to you to figure out.
I think we're okay. I think we need these answers. I think we need to.
Can we just delete the squiggles and just leave the words? I'm gonna do that.
I'm not sure if we can.
Yeah, you can. I'm gonna. Oh shit! Oh no! Oh, excuse me! I already lost one of the words. Oh no! Why am I bad at this?
You can redo.
Oh, undo.
Or undo.
There we go. But why won't it erase the squiggles?
Yeah, so I was trying to do it. It didn't want to. So it's okay.
All right.
So the first, let's take a look at what we have. So we need the month for each of these boxes, I think, was what the flavor text had said. So
according okay. Was it the wording that was on the box? Is that like a hint to?
We can scroll back up and take a look at the flavor text.
Or
all
the squiggles on top.
Well, okay, so use the planting schedule to figure out the month when all 4 veggies can be planted at the same time. And then on the box it says the day that you I guess that doesn't help. That's not like the day that you plant is not the day that you eat, which is a true fact, yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look back at the calendar. And bear in mind that celery is also in this first group. We just don't have it.
I can put that in. Just so we have it. Okay. So let's, I guess, find celery. Celery's March through August, which seems like the longest time span. Let's see.
Yep.
Eggplant overlaps that with 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Squash. Oh, I like how they have it tiered in the order. So squash overlaps only the 3 months. And then beets are up here, and you follow the column, and beets overlap only by 2. So that would just be May then for beets, right? Is that?
Seems so.
I really like that you ordered them, or no, it's just how we found them. We just happened to find them in that order. I was like, oh, this is brilliant.
There's no implicit order to the vegetables,
but good job us.
Nice order accident.
A good job to us for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here, Brussels sprouts is 4 months here. So
May, August.
Cauliflower, we've gone down to 3. Where's lettuce? Lettuce is 2, and that actually seems to be, tomatoes, and it looks like it is July, right? Seems to be the column.
I would agree with that.
July. Okay, great. And then box number 3. Is it only, are we missing did I miss a vegetable? Broccoli, onion, spinach?
No, I don't think so.
Carrots.
We did.
Oh,
Carrots,
you know why? It's because David is so allergic. I didn't even want to write it down.
I know. Yeah, it's a problem.
On the page. That's why.
I appreciate you thinking of me.
I was trying to protect you, David, for the carrots. Okay. So we've got broccoli. Start with the 2. And
I think we can just jump straight to spinach. Spinach and carrots. Yeah, actually.
Well, they're all
they actually
carrots. I think it's got to be April, right?
Yep. For onions, yep.
Okay. Okay. So we've got May, July, and April.
Okay. So now we need to go back up and take a look at the flavor text once more and take a look at what our final bit of cluing is. Third, use this month number to reveal words in your surroundings that create the answer. We're counting on you. Counting, that sounds like indexing.
Oh, good catch. Okay.
I will try and realign this here. More or less.
Close enough.
Yeah.
All right. So, Peih-Gee, you had our months. What months did we have?
May, July, and April.
Okay, so let's...
So would it be like so May is the 5th month? Does that mean we take the 5th word?
It sounds like what I'm thinking.
Okay, so we've got plant for plot 1.
Yep.
Plot 2 is July, which is the 7th month. I'm like, ooh, let me count this out. 7th month. Nurturing a community garden is feeding the body and feeding the soul. Oh, that's so cute. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So just the.
Feed it, plant the.
And then plot 3 is April. It's the 4th month, 4th word. We water the seed because it holds the promise of our future. So it must be seed. Plant the seed.
Did we get it? Did we puzzle hunt?
You puzzle hunted.
Cute. I feel like, you know what? Like, I feel like my niece, who's 6, would really enjoy this. I do think maybe spelling out these words would probably be a little bit difficult. And what I would probably do for someone younger is I would give her the word and then have her find it in there for someone who's like 6, who's kind of starting to read. But I think it's still, you can still make it accessible, for younger kids that way.
I agree.
It's this balance that what you're doing in all but one of the puzzles. There's one mechanic toward the end that requires a bit more vocabulary awareness. But most of them, it's more so just the presentation style that dictates whether it's doable by younger kids or a broader audience.
That's awesome. I'm totally trying to find ways of getting like my niece hooked on this stuff. Currently her favorite obsession is scavenger hunts, which is easy enough. So like I'll just do a little rhyming, like, you know, look under the seat at the place where you eat, you know, stuff like that. Like, and it's, you know, I think those are really fun for kids her age too. Oh, and we are doing, I'm really excited. This Saturday, I'm reviewing, is it called Enchanted Realms? It's like a kind of show that's for kids, but like, I think they'll have you also like doing scavenger hunts around your house. Anyway, yeah, cool stuff. Those are super fun. I'm like, I totally want to play more now.
That was the goal. That was what we were hoping for here.
It's, you know what, honestly, I really like these kind of like easy beginner puzzle hunts. They're just so satisfying because they're really quick and easy, right? So it's like yes, there's a satisfaction in really solving a long and drawn out puzzle hunt, but something like this that you can solve really quick is also just gives you that little hit.
If you like what you saw, go check out escapetheplagues.com.
Yeah, escapetheplagues.com. Do you have any other projects that you want? Do you want to? You can stop the screen share.
Yeah. One other thing I'll note quickly on this puzzle is just that the planting schedule is an actual planting schedule. This is, I think it's zone 5, with only a couple modifications to accommodate the logic element of the puzzle. But
that's cool.
It's the seed, so to speak, of this idea was, what would you do when you're working in a community garden? You would be planning out when you should be planting different vegetables, when is a good time to plant different combinations of things. And while you would not be planting these specific combinations of vegetables in specific garden beds, it captures that similar action of planning out when you're going to plant different vegetables. And the location specifically comes from, we left the overall game location ambiguous for the most part, but Mika is a young Lakota woman, so it's loosely in the Midwest, and there's a pipeline protest also that happens in one of the earliest scenes. So it's trying to balance that sense of being grounded in specific identities and locations while still retaining some more universality to it.
That's awesome. Like James Cobalt in chat says, I love learning, but my favorite type of learning is when I am tricked into it.
Me too.
So is this one of the first puzzles that you came out? Because I know you recently started your own puzzle design company, right? Is that correct?
Yes, about a year and a half ago.
Uh-huh. Is this one of the first projects that you've worked on, or do you have any other projects you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, I've worked on a few dozen projects over the past year. This is the first direct-to-consumer project. This is the first one that I'm like directly selling to people. Right,
because usually it's more like consulting, is that, or like...
Consulting or working with a company or group on other projects. Another one that is available publicly that I worked on recently is the Tangram Journal from Art of Play, which is over 100-page art journal featuring, the first volume features 6 artists, ranging from someone who does hyper-realistic ballpoint pen masterpieces to a sort of fantastical taxidermist to somebody who makes algorithmic art. And I won't say too much about the structure, but there are many, many more puzzles hidden throughout the journal than meet the eye. And there's no explicit puzzle section. The puzzles are sort of naturally embedded amongst the rest of the content. There are reveals throughout some of the puzzles, which even in things that very much don't look like they would be puzzles, do have hidden properties to them.
That sounds really cool. Does it say, and it never says explicitly, like, there are puzzles? Because if you look at it, you're like, oh, it's an art journal. It's a cool art book. And
yeah, so there are a few things. When you open the journal, there's a weird subscription card of sorts, which, to people familiar with puzzles, like David, you puzzle reading into your envelopes earlier, like, you see this, you're probably going to be like, okay, so figure it out. 100% fun. Each entry must be a single English word. To people who know puzzles, that will be a bit of a hint. And then there's a message pretty early on, which I'm trying to find it. Tangram Volume 1 follows 6 artists into their worlds. The Tangram is a Chinese puzzle consisting of 7 pieces. You will see some of these puzzle pieces dotted throughout the journal, denoting our own puzzle journal, should you wish to follow it, which is a decently explicit trailhead.
That's so cool. Do you have the name of that? I'll put that in chat.
Yes, I can.
It's a decent trailhead. It's not leaving, weird letters on someone's front steps.
Yes. And for those new to puzzles, the puzzles are intended to be very accessible and have a sufficiently gentle difficulty curve. For those who do a lot of puzzle hunts, it's 6 puzzle arcs and a multi-stage meta, so there's plenty for you too.
I love that. I love when puzzle hunts take different forms. So this is like a puzzle hunt, but it's also an art journal. I like things that are like multifunctional, right? So like, I recently did the Solve Our Shirts from CU Adventures, which was like so much fun. And you've done it, right? You've done it, Matthew?
I have, yeah.
It's brilliant. Like, and you have a t-shirt afterwards. Like, how cool is that? So like, it's like you have this puzzle hunt, and then now you still have this beautiful art journal. You could keep it on your coffee table. You can still look at it and kind of remember like those cool moments. I love that. I wish, I'm looking forward to seeing more of this type of collaborative thing.
And spoiler, the fourth guest for the Reality Escape Pod are Anne and Chris Lukeman from CU Adventures, the creators of that.
Yeah.
That's 2 weeks.
If you guys have enjoyed this, Solve Your Shirts, it doesn't, like, I don't want to overhype it, but it is so cool. And I feel like it is so understated on their website of just like, it's just kind of this shirt with puzzles. And you're like, whatever, it's like a maze on a shirt and I'll just solve it and that's it. And it's like, there's so much, like, how is it possible that they made such a layered, nuanced, like, puzzle hunt in a t-shirt? Like, I don't...
I thought that was a really amazing example of what you were describing before, Peih-Gee, about how you can have really sort of easy, like, they're playing on lots of common tropes, but in such clever and fun ways that even me, having seen pretty much all, well, not all, but most of them before, they were still super exciting, and I had so many, like, out loud, oh my gosh, this is so cool moments while playing.
Yeah. It really is cool.
And again, this brings us to, like, I remember I was like, I wish I could stream this. Like, this is so cool that I want to share it with people. And it's like, you can't, because you have to let everyone have their own aha moment, which is fine. Okay.
And maybe we'll do a spoilers club on Solve Our Shirts.
I think we probably will, because I think they said they wanted to come on and actually chat about us with it as well. So
yeah, I think we'll do that. Plus, when we do our bonus episodes afterwards, which is usually just Peih-Gee and I, but after they were guests, they came on and chatted with us for like another hour in the bonus episode. So yeah, they're great. They're so much fun.
And we can take some questions, because I think Celia has a question in the chat.
I was just about to say that.
If any of you guys have questions for Matthew or even me and David, you can go ahead and pop them in the chat, and we'll take some questions now while we still have a little bit of time. So IndieCade Game Girl, Celia says, I have a question for Matthew when you start taking questions. I'd love to hear about the playtesting process and the demo of playtesters.
Yeah. So broadly, playtesting is, if you haven't written puzzles before, like, playtesting is the most important thing, and really being targeted with knowing your audience, knowing the range of types of audiences who might play your game, and making sure to really fully playtest with every segment within that demographic is really important. Oftentimes, I mean, games I've played that I haven't enjoyed as much throughout the past year often have a lot of potential and sort of overly siloed playtests. It's people who are maybe newer to puzzles and get only their friends who've played one escape room to playtest. So making sure that you get if it's going to be a game that kids play, making sure that kids play it on their own, kids play it with their parents, kids play it unobserved, kids play it observed.
When you say overly siloed, is that what you mean? Like just one type
like,
of?
People don't realize the range of audience that they'll have. So especially this often takes the form of more puzzle heavy games or escape room people trying to do more puzzle hunty sort of stuff, but not actually having people who solve puzzle hunts playtest their puzzles. So you're going to get very biased feedback if you only have people who are used to escape room conventions playtesting puzzle hunt style puzzles. But yeah, in my own playtesting, I pull from various sources. I have a Discord server that I use to sort of corral general ongoing playtesting. I'm usually playtesting anywhere from like 1 to 5 puzzles each week. I'm very conscious of what I know I don't know and what I don't yet know I don't know. So, for instance, when I write certain types of clues, I know that people are going to interpret them a range of ways. So I know that I need to test them on a range of people to fully know that range of ways. But then the things that I don't know are like, well, of course, errors in the puzzles or something, but maybe I had a puzzle recently where it was themed on Pepperidge Farm cookies, and I didn't realize until after I launched it, and this didn't even come up with in playtesting actually, that they changed their names a few years ago. Like there's some cookies that have multiple names in different places. So we had to issue an errata for that puzzle.
It's a lot of research.
Yeah. So to really make an airtight puzzle takes a lot of playtesting. And that puzzle, I don't think it came up in playtesting because our audience was all from a certain location where searching for those cookie names did lead to the same names everywhere.
Oh gosh.
We should do a Girl Scout cookie puzzle where you actually need to use the variants of the names to solve a thing.
Yeah, totally. But then playtesting is also very dependent on medium. So if I'm making digital puzzles, I know that sending an initial draft to somebody digitally is going to be pretty similar to what the final version will be presented as, versus when playtesting the Tangram journal.
Feel free to send me one if you need playtesters.
This physical thing didn't come into existence until long after the puzzles were done, and even just the process of iterating on the puzzles happened while the journal was still being created. So I being careful not to spoil any of the larger structural mechanics, but there are a few elements in the puzzles that really are integrated throughout a large amount of content in the journal. And since that was being edited and constantly iterated on, there were some things I just couldn't playtest until the end. So I had to find a way to distill it into a slightly different form so that it could be playtested roughly equivalent to what it was going to actually be.
It's tough. And, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just, even then, like, one error made it into the final version, which amazingly didn't break the puzzle. In one very long instruction that you extract, there was some line spacing changed, and it led to you getting a different article, which still made sense within the context of the instruction.
Oh man.
Oh my god, when I saw that it was something different, I freaked out. In print, holding the final version, I was like, oh my god. But then...
But they do a test one. They'll send you a test one first, though, right?
There was a final copy pass after even that test version.
And still not...
Produced.
Oh god, yeah. I remember talking, I won't say who, but like I've talked to some other like designers that worked with like a major manufacturer. And they were like, when they got it back, there was a puzzle where the exact color was, I guess, very important. And it was like a different color, or a designer decided to make it a different color. You know what I mean? And they were like, it's not gonna, the puzzle doesn't work if you don't have the right colors. Like it sounds really difficult.
Yeah. And especially if you get into like paper thickness and perforations and other properties, yeah, things become increasingly harder to test the more you add in those sorts of elements. Another consideration is size of audience. So when I'm writing puzzles for a puzzle hunt where people are solving on teams of 4 to 6 players, that's super easy to test. I have experienced puzzle hunters who can go through those puzzles, give me feedback, they know what's up. When I'm writing puzzles for an ARG, which is intended to be communal solves taking hundreds or even thousands of players, hours or days to solve something,
Oh my God.
that becomes much harder to playtest, because what I'm making is not something that I want an individual or even a small team to be able to playtest effectively within a few hours. So, for instance, I did a 2-ish week ARG for Madian, this EDM producer. Really cool project. We hid the trailhead in the audio of a single he had released, and over the course of 2 weeks, some very, very elaborate and grindy puzzles, and a few that required some significant technical skill, led to the release of a limited edition, limited run 200 copy album that he had secretly recorded a couple of years before. But along the way, we had a few puzzles that, for various reasons, we just couldn't fully playtest. So there was one that was 24-hour GeoGuessr. We had a new fixed point panorama appear every 12 minutes. And something happened when you plotted everything out on the map. But we had spot checked those, and they worked. We basically dynamically generated the puzzle, or not dynamically, algorithmically generated the puzzle. We plotted out what the thing we were drawing out on the map looked like, queried the Google Maps API at those specific points, made sure that the panoramas looked good, and most of them were. There was a logic behind the general locations they were in, except one of them, which we didn't notice until the players got stuck on this, was inside a yarn shop in LA. So even after these 200-300 players had solved the entire puzzle, were on shift, staying up for almost a full day solving this whole thing.
Oh my
God. And they knew they had solved it. They were like, we still might need every bit of information. And I think I heard they spent almost 10 hours trying to figure out which yarn shop in LA this panorama was inside.
Oh, because it's just inside it. Okay, so you just see a panorama.
Point inside. You're just in an aisle surrounded by.
And you have to figure out where it is.
Yes. Oh. Which for any of them outside was fine, but it turns out identifying a specific yarn shop in LA is not trivial.
Do you have to go to their website and cross-check which yarn brands they carry? Do they even? How would you?
I have no idea how they got through that one.
Wow.
But then another puzzle from that game that we also weren't able to fully test for a different reason was a giant 10-piece paper craft model that I designed, which very intricate pieces covered in sort of dark red and black artwork that was the vibe of the whole game. And this is actually one of my favorite puzzles I've designed within the past year, and also something I could only do within an ARG. I think it was 40 or 50 pages of printing, but it makes this really cool model. But then players have these random looking polyhedral forms, and they're like, okay, what are we supposed to do with this now? What they had to realize was that the game was targeted at Madian's superfans, all of whom owned a copy of the vinyl that he had released the year before. And the artwork on the vinyl actually aligned with the shapes of the papercraft sculptures. So they were able to open their vinyl, lay these on top, and then the pieces had one extraction on top and one in how they aligned with the record on the bottom.
Wow.
He's a witch. Burn him.
Right? Who put this in my house? What?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I
would
wanted
freak
that
out.
magical moment of I have this object sitting in my house that wasn't designed to be a puzzle, but how can I make it seem like it was designed to be a puzzle and sort of retroactively activate this piece? Especially in ARGs, but generally, I love this idea of getting a physical object or getting something that people construct on their own into their houses and just having it sitting there. Like, make it a cool enough object that they're not going to throw it out, but then activate it later on, make it have some hidden property.
This isn't anything
days
that
or
like
months later.
people already sent out. This was just, you guys just assume that whoever's going to be doing this puzzle would already have that album. It's not like you made sure they had it first.
Correct, yes. Because we knew the behaviors of the super fans, we were able to cross-check the people who were playing with the people who had purchased the album to some extent. But the funny thing about that was it took them a very long time before they realized what was actually going on. And as many people within this solving community started assembling this papercraft, many of them actually had the album within the shot of photos that they were posting, just not knowing whatsoever that, not having any idea that would be part of the puzzle.
Wow.
And for something, the reason I say that could only exist within an ARG is, one, the scope of work is beyond what I would expect of anybody within a puzzle hunt. The rules of what you can expect people to do, within safety obviously, are expanded within an ARG, especially for communal solves. But also, things can be, in puzzle hunts, you often have intentionally don't clue certain elements when you want to increase the frustration, but also increase the satisfaction of fully figuring something out on your own. And obviously in puzzle hunts, you typically have a constrained time in which you want somebody to solve something. In an ARG, you don't need everybody to solve it. You just need one person to have that aha. So as long as the leap is logical and fair once you get to it, you can create much wider leaps than you could have in other settings. But yeah, not something I could play test.
Right. So that's really the main difference, because I see you referring to puzzle hunts and then ARGs separately. And in your opinion, is it a difference of scope? Is that what it is?
Oh, it's a lot of things. Very different experiential goals. The scope of puzzle hunts varies wildly. You have from like Puzzled Pint being 4 quick puzzles and a meta, accessible to broad audiences, to the MIT Mystery Hunt in the game being long weekend events with, in the case of the Mystery Hunt, very large teams attacking 200 plus puzzles. Side note, my team won this past year's Mystery Hunt, so that has been on my mind a lot recently.
You will
the team that wins the Mystery Hunt each year.
I'm sorry for your win.
I know.
Did you guys ever consider just pulling in a hot second place? just nipping on the heels.
There are a lot of teams that sandbag for second. I think second, is generally more coveted than first.
And we have come in second the past few years. Totally intentionally. Totally intentional.
You and the other teams are all
we're
like
excited to be right.
looking at each other. You? The answer?
But back to your question about differences between puzzle hunts and ARGs. It's the difference between puzzle hunts being very puzzle-forward experiences. I mean, the majority of what you're doing is just solving puzzles. And while there may be, and often should be, story, that it's acknowledged that you're solving a puzzle hunt and that there's a story that's part of the puzzle hunt typically. Whereas ARGs really, to varying degrees, blur the lines between reality and the game. I'll give a shout out to one of my favorite puzzle design or game design books, Pervasive Games, which addresses ARGs and ARG adjacent stuff incredibly well.
Is that Pervasive Games?
Pervasive Games, yes. Generally, there are elements of, like when I was describing before, that puzzles can have the effect of you discover you have some aha in a puzzle that's applicable to the outside world. Oftentimes that's more a side effect rather than the foreground effect of puzzle hunts, whereas that's very much player engagement, transmedia, multimedia elements really are the bread and butter of ARGs. And they go much deeper into weaving players into the story, whereas puzzle hunts really don't do that at all.
Right.
They totally could. And I think as we go forward, the top puzzle hunts continue to mix things up, subvert expectations, really break the boundaries of what people who've been doing puzzle hunts for many years have come to expect. So they may move, there may be more crossover between puzzle hunt and ARG elements, but they, as of now at least, they are fairly distinct disciplines.
I also find ARGs in general are much more comfortable with grindy elements, like massively grindy. And by that I mean challenges, I won't even necessarily call them puzzles, that just require a ridiculous amount of legwork or research to peel back the layers.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I personally design ARGs, they tend to be much more puzzle heavy, that because that's what I do. The style of the puzzles adapts to ARGs, but they're very much story driven as well, but through deeper puzzles than people often go.
And as Errol is pointing out, this crowdsourcing answers, which really is, I think, one of the hallmarks of ARGs, is just this like large pool of people who are more or less working together on it, on a scale that outpaces even the mystery hunt, like 50 to 75 person teams, which seems like a ton of people, but when you're talking about the entire internet, and the types of people who are willing to go and track down what cabin in the woods James Franco is in, there's a different level of attention to detail that some of those folks are willing to dive into, which is inconceivable to me, completely.
I think there's like a subreddit that's probably a place if you're interested in finding ARGs, because I'm like, how do people even hear about these or find them? Are there groups online?
I would recommend checking out ARGN, ArgNet, which is run by Michael Anderson, who has been writing about this stuff for a long time. He's been in the game a real long time and is a lovely human being.
Awesome. Does anybody else have questions for Matthew? If not, I think it's a pretty good place to stop.
Yeah, I will. If no one else has any other questions, I'll tell a little story of the puzzle that I designed that had co-designed. That was not testable. I proposed to Lisa with a puzzle, a one-of-a-kind puzzle box that I had hired. I hired a guy named Kel Snake to produce, and he's awesome. What he gave me was slightly different from what I was expecting. So this puzzle box showed up. I had it sent to one of my close friends who was also a neighbor at the time, and I show up to go and try and solve this thing, and it wasn't exactly what I thought it was supposed to be. It was super cool, but it was way, way, way harder than I thought it was going to be. And so I ended up having to build around it a series of puzzles and clues that led up to the puzzle box to make the whole thing work. But I had an audience of one.
To help her solve it.
Yeah. So I had an audience of one. I was if I was going to try and playtest, I was trying to playtest for Lisa. So it was not really a playtestable puzzle. So I just did my very best, and thankfully that worked out. But
well, because were the answers like customized? Like, where did we go
the
on our third date? You know, something, was it stuff like that?
the answers were a mixture of things that were specific to the box, and also specific to her. Like I have she's constantly like ridiculously physically cold. She's a very warm person, but physically very cold. And so I have, since the very early days of our relationship, I affectionately call her Ice Queen. And so that was one of the that was one of the solutions.
Wow, but that is so smart of you. Could you imagine, like, by the time she actually gets to like the ring inside, she's all frustrated and pissed off because she can't solve this thing.
That was the big fear, was on top of the fact that it's not just a puzzle for an audience of one, but it's a puzzle tied to a proposal for an audience of one.
That is so thoughtful, though, that you thought of that, and you're like, I don't want you to be frustrated by this, so I will go ahead and create this whole thing.
It was on top of a whole day's worth of. I made a whole shell game of because she knew I was going to be proposing, so since she knew I was going to be proposing, the only way to go and make it interesting was in the method, and so I had done this whole month-long thing where I didn't let her book anything on the weekends, which, if for those of you who know her, that's not normal for her. I booked I booked 4 weekends worth of ridiculously fun things, and none of that had anything to do with the proposal. They were all red herrings. And then I had an escape room owner, Derek Tam from Mission Escape Games. He reached out to Lisa and invited us to the next game. And I told Derek, I said, look, I am going to be as disinterested as I possibly can be. I'm going to have nothing to do with this. I will have no fingerprints on it at all. And so he reached out to her. She scheduled it. I seemed utterly disinterested. I had to sneak the puzzle box into our home. So some of our closest friends, and at the time most regular teammates, all couldn't make it to this game, which meant that we had a ridiculously eclectic team of people, including a random coworker of mine, a producer and a reporter from CBS News, because we were just about to do a segment with them, and they wanted to play an escape game. We had this random cohort of people, and I had to forget my house keys because I needed to give my house keys to someone else, and then I needed to make sure Lisa had hers. There were so many things that could have gone catastrophically wrong. And then the real kicker on all of this was that was the one night. Normally Lisa's right, like we finish playing her game, we'll go out and have a drink, and she's ready for bed. That was the one night where she gets telling the story poorly. She got in that game a ring box that didn't have a ring in it. It had a key and a scroll with a little riddle on it, because I'm a jerk. And that was for reasons that I will never understand. The one night that she decided to stay out at the bar extra late, hanging out with all the people we were, this totally random group of people that we were with. And so I was sitting there just like dying, like, let's go home.
That's amazing. Oh my God, yeah. That is so cute.
But there is a whole few. I think the post, Lisa did a post on the whole thing. It's escape. I think it's escape of the ring from the puzzle box or something like that. It's
escaping the single life.
Yeah.
I want to play that game. I'm just kidding. I don't. That's awesome.
I'm single, but I apologize in advance to anybody someday who I am engaged to. They will have some very difficult puzzles to solve.
You'll have to one up that now.
I know, like hearing that story.
The thing that I didn't expect from that was the amount of guys that I knew, friends and coworkers who were married, who upon hearing that story got really pissed off at me. They were just like yeah, they got really salty for me breaking the curve. It felt very college.
The bar is already too low. Thank you for raising it, David. Thank you.
I just wanted to do something fun.
That's awesome. Hey, Matthew, I have a question. What are those rainbowy things in your background? I've been staring at them.
Yeah. Oh, which one?
You've got two.
I've been.
Have you been standing this whole time?
Normal workshop. I've been back with my family through part of quarantine. So I'm back in my childhood bedroom here as my temporary office. And I was, and still am, but was obsessed with origami as a kid, and just have like thousands of origami models all over this house here. So this is a fun one. This is actually, I'll let you guess first, or anybody in the chat also, if you know what form this is.
Is this a trick? Is this a trick question? I'm like, is that a Star of David? I'm all 3D.
Or what the individual polyhedra at least are on this.
They're
It looks
pyramids?
like a whole bunch of triangles.
Yeah.
Pyramids, yeah.
It's a map of my origins. I love that. It is 6 intersecting icosahedral or isosceles tetrahedra.
And that's all origami?
So that's all origami. All paper, no glue.
He's a witch. Burn him.
It's pyramids, which are isosceles triangle faces instead of equilateral triangle faces, which makes this super. It almost looks asymmetrical, but then you get parts like this where it just perfectly aligns.
Oh, wow.
This was a nightmare to assemble, though, because you do the first few intersecting tetrahedra, and you have to visualize where all the other ones are going to go before they're actually in place.
Did you design that, or is that from like a pattern?
No, I folded it at an origami convention with the person who designed it many years ago. And then this one, you're probably asking about this one originally. This is a...
Whoa.
Yeah. This is a 555-piece torus. It uses a very simple unit. Each one, it's called the fizz unit. Each one takes like 20 seconds to fold. It's very simple. But altogether, it makes...
It's very simple, he says.
No, it really is. I can teach it to you sometime. But this was I think it was my like senior year of high school. If you got all A's in your classes, you could just not take finals. So I just had like a week of not having to pay attention to anything at the end of school. So each year of high school, I did some massive origami project.
Wow. I feel like you must have extra folds in your brain. Like, how do you come up with all of this stuff?
Any other interesting...
So were you always like doing like designing puzzles and stuff like that since you were a kid? Is like you've always been interested in this type of stuff?
Honestly, sort of. I didn't get into the medium of puzzle hunts until college, but I was always getting into puzzles growing up. We've been sorting through documents from my childhood recently, and I found one when I don't remember how old I was. I was under 10, I think, and I was coming up, I forget if it was a school assignment or just playing around, but I came up with like a concept for a restaurant, and I was like, when you get each dish, there'll be a puzzle with each one, and then you'll put together all the puzzles and there'll be one final puzzle. And I was like, oh my god, I came up with puzzle hunts independently.
I love that.
Yeah, super into scavenger hunts. The other big influence, which I'm surprised I went an hour and a half without mentioning this, letterboxing has been one of the biggest influences in my life for 16 years now.
What is letterboxing? Why have I never heard of this?
Yeah, it's a real-life treasure hunt where you follow clues to find hidden boxes out in the world.
Oh, is that geocaching?
Yeah, so it predates geocaching by over 100 years, actually. It started in England in the mid-1800s and then came to the US in 1997. So similar to geocaching, you're following something to lead to a location. It differs in that you're following clues instead of GPS coordinates. And each box, rather than in geocaching, it contains like swag that you swap out. Letterboxing, you have a hand-carved rubber stamp in each box. So there's a whole visual art element to it as well. So when you find one, you stamp an image of the box's stamp into your own personal logbook, which you carry with you. And then you bring your own personal signature stamp with you, which you stamp into each box's logbook.
Wow.
And then you rehide the box where you found it.
So where does somebody get, and then this is still ongoing, people still do this?
Ongoing, yeah.
So if people are interested in that, where would they even go to get started?
Yeah, there's the main website for it now is atlasquest.com. I'll put a link in the chat.
Atlasquest.com.
Yeah, you can just search by location and find boxes near you. You should pay attention to like when it was last found and the current status of the box.
That
As
sounds
with
really
anything
cool.
like this, they potentially go missing if they're poorly hidden or poorly rehidden, or but yeah, I found over 5,000 of these and hidden about 300 of my own over the past 15, 16 years.
Wow. So do you then construct like a little box that you like chain to a tree somewhere, or do you bury it? Like what's...
Yeah, the techniques for hiding them really vary. The most common one is just like a small Tupperware box, some sort of waterproof plastic box, hidden at the base of a tree under what they call a spore, a suspicious pile of rocks. You can also have a spool, a suspicious pile of logs.
That sounds
That's
better.
very Survivor.
I know. I was expecting some cool little house for this, and he's all like, it's a Tupperware, and I was like,
Well, that's the base form of this. Then people get into more creative variations. I found them, let's see, what's the limit of spoiling things? These are retired anyway. There was one I found where you're instructed to bring 2 9-volt batteries and some wires and at least 2 people. And it leads you to a bridge in the middle of a park. And the clue is basically find the 2 that are unlike the others. And on this bridge, there are a bunch of metal bolts holding down the boards of the bridge, except there are 2 that are closer to each other than all the other bolts on the bridge. You can probably guess what you do next. Hook up the batteries to these 2 bolts, and then the box descends on a string about 150 feet to the person standing below the bridge.
wow.
I found some in like puzzle birdhouses. I found one in a hobbit house somebody had constructed in the woods. I found some in treasure chests. One of the fundamental rules that people stick to is you don't bury them, you don't have to dig stuff up. Top priority is to be environmentally sustainable, and having people repeatedly dig in a certain area just would not be.
So do you look for something that's within like a 1 mile square radius, you know, so you know kind of roughly where you're going to be?
It depends. The clues can range from straightforward directions, so they can just be go to this trailhead, walk 3/4 of a mile down the trail until you get to this intersection, take a compass bearing of 370, I almost said 375 degrees. Take a compass bearing of 310 degrees. Okay. Modulo compass bearings. Where is this bridge?
That
In the
sounds...
Philly area, but I don't think the box is active anymore.
That sounds like when in my 20s I used to go to these raves in the desert, and the directions for getting to these raves were like, when you exit, you're going to turn on this dirt road, you're going to reset your odometer, you're going to turn right at 0.2 miles, you're going to go, 7.36 miles, and then you're going to go left at like the glow stick. I'm like, I did similar things like this when I was young.
Yeah, so the base level of the clues is just clear instructions getting you to a place. But of course, people get much more creative with the clues. I grew up in eastern Pennsylvania in a community where people got really creative with puzzle clues. And there were some really insidious ones that throughout like middle and high school, I spent probably dozens of hours solving a single clue. And that's really what immersed me in a very different medium of puzzle design, but puzzle design nonetheless. Trying to think of what examples I can give, because a lot of these are still active. Well, there's some really cool clues which have site-specific puzzles, which change your perception of what it means to be in a certain location. I'll describe this one very abstractly. There was one clue that went unfound for many years, and it turns out the path it led you on at one point had a bit of a glitch in the path, and people just ignored it for a long time. But it turned out it was actually when it faced you toward a mural of a certain location, it implied that you were supposed to go through a wall, and going through that wall actually was like, treat that as a portal to where that location actually is.
Oh, wow. That's
so
cool.
Took you like 30 miles away to a completely different location to continue the guided path. But yeah, having found and created so many of these, it really influences certainly site-specific puzzle adventures that I create, which sadly I haven't been able to do much of in the past year. But just, as with any niche, creative, weird hobby that you have, like, it's just a treasure trove of ideas to pull from as I'm designing puzzles and adventures for people.
Awesome.
I'm fairly certain that Chris Latner, one of the creators of The Room in Berlin, Germany, which is broadly recognized as one of the top escape room companies in the Western world, he started off in like the geocaching letterboxing world. He builds insane things.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like,
yeah. Certainly I was last in Berlin before I started playing escape rooms, so that's the top of my Berlin and Netherlands are top of my very, very, very long travel list once things
one day.
Such.
One day. Well, anyway, I do believe we should be wrapping things up. So thank you, Matthew, so much for joining us. This has been a ton of fun, really interesting. And also thank you for, trusting us and letting us solve one of your puzzles on the interwebs. We really appreciate it.
and where can people find you if they are interested in retaining you for consulting, or they just want to kind of find out what projects you've been working on?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Enigmida, Enigmida, which I'll let you figure out what that anagram's to. And you can find my contact information there, but you can DM me on there or send me an email at hello@enigmida.com. I do all sorts of stuff, consulting, custom escape rooms. I've made all sorts of custom puzzle games for birthdays, engagements, secret events I can't talk about here. And the project, Escape the Plagues, is available at escapetheplagues.com. And we have lots more information there. You saw just part of one scene of the game. It's full 5 scenes with a debrief activity afterwards. So lots more where that came from.
Awesome.
And yeah, keep an eye on the social media. I have a newsletter also, which you can sign up for at newsletter.enigmida.com. And it's roughly weekly. I recently have been talking a lot about sort of behind the scenes of Escape the Plagues, but going forwards, I will have a lot more puzzle design background stuff on there. And I have some exciting topics and exciting announcements that I'll be sharing there in the next few weeks and months.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Matthew, and we will see you guys next month.
Forward to it. Take care, everyone.